So, of course, the $64,000 question is, first off, how did you translate what the egghead quantum physics said? I mean, how would you're on a bus somewhere and someone says, so Lynn, I mean, quantum physics, I mean, what's that mean to me? How do you answer what that means to them?
Well, what it means to them is, first of all, we're all connected. I mean, I think the most fundamental thing is we're all connected by an energy field. We swim in a sea of light, basically, which is the zero-point field. And I say, first of all, you get away from the whole idea of separateness, because separateness is the biggest problem in the world now. I mean, separateness causes all the wars in the world. It causes the mine is bigger than yours mentality. I have to have more. I don't have enough. I have to grab this for myself type of idea. So you have to rethink your life in terms of being part of a bigger whole. And secondly, you have to also understand that your intention is going to affect your world, and that what you think, your thoughts, your very thoughts, affect everything that's going on in your life. And so you have to think wisely.
Why does quantum physics say that? And give me a well, quantum physics says that because.
Okay, I think there's two really important things here that a lot of people touch on. I'll say that again because you may do it again independently. There's two really important elements here. There's the Copenhagen interpretation basically means that reality is unset jello. That's the way I like to put it. There's this just big indeterminate sledge out there that's our potential life, and that we, by our very active involvement, our active noticing, our observation, we get that jello to set. So we're intrinsic to the whole process of reality. Say that again. We're intrinsic to the whole process of reality. Our involvement creates that reality. Now, the second thing that's really important is the whole idea of non-locality, the idea of action at a distance, which is, I call it till death do us part. And it means if you've got two electrons and you move one to Tokyo and one to San Francisco, they both know about each other through time and space. And if one breaks his leg, if he's skiing in Vail, the other one breaks his leg too, even if he's sipping a latte in Colorado. So there's this constant action, and we're finding non-locality everywhere, in our bodies, in space, from stars, in regions of the zero-point field. Everything is connected. And so we have this involvement in everything. We are our world. There's no out there. There's no place where we end and everything else begins. We're all connected. And we also have this involvement in creating our reality.
So when you say that we're all connected and we don't really end, we're all, what is the scientific basis for that? Specifically, what? Because that sounds like a mystic from the the enlightened spheres of the Brahmaloka speaking. I mean, but now you're saying it in scientific. What's the scientific?
Okay, this is going to take a long time to try to answer. There are, first of all, there's demonstrations from the work of Fritz Albert Popp that we are beings of light, that we are sending out and receiving small photons, photons, small particles of light. We're sending and receiving photons all the time. Those are small particles of light. And that we're beaming all the time. New research is demonstrating that this is coming out of our very DNA, that this is controlling all the processes of the body, but it's also sending and receiving outside of ourselves. We also know that our communication between ourselves occurs in frequencies. This is other work that French scientists did, demonstrating that our cells talk to each other not simply through chemicals, but on a lower nether region through frequency. We also know that there is this ground state energy called the zero-point field, which is many scientists believe, now people have lots of different names for it, the vacuum, the strict constructionists call it the vacuum, the loose constructionists call it the zero-point field. And I like the zero-point field because it speaks to us. It's a good metaphor, and it's an easier one to digest, I think, than many of the other kinds of metaphors for this lower ground state energy. But it's a very important aspect of energy because governments like, organizations like NASA, British Aerospace, are all trying to tap into this incredible, unimaginably large energy sea. And they feel if they can tap this, we can travel to different galaxies. So they understand that in empty space, there is this unbelievable energy. But we are doing a little energy dance all the time, not only with the photons that we're sending and receiving, but we, our bodies are made up of the same stuff as everything else, as this chair, as the tables, as everything that we look at. We all derive down to a set of subatomic particles. And particles aren't just little billiard balls that swirl around a nuclei like we're taught in physics. They're little packets of vibrating energy, and they're constantly passing energy back and forth like a little medicine ball. So what's going on is a little tango between our electrons and the electrons of the zero-point field all the time. So we're sending and receiving, we're getting information back and forth. And remember, waves are units of information. They're constantly when they interfere, they're constantly absorbing more information. Many scientists have come up with information, like with magnetic resonance imaging, demonstrating that these waves have they're little holograms of information that can be regenerated, that have a history of information about the structures they come from. So we're talking about a sea of not only unfathomably large energy, but a memory bank of everything that ever was, just out there in empty space.
The first question, some sort of fairly concise thing about the question about, okay, you said we're all connected, but how does that change my experience when I go into a grocery store? I mean, how does that worm its way in so it's something more than just an intellectual concept?
I think, first of all, it's studying what other living things do and understanding that you're part of this giant ecosystem. So maybe there's some timings that are good times to do things and bad times to do things. We know now we're affected by the planets. We watch animals. And animals are hugely affected in their intention and their ESP abilities by certain things. I mean, pigeons can't navigate their way home when there's a geomagnetic storm. So maybe we look at ourselves as part of a larger thing. We also look at other cultures where you realize that there is this reciprocity thing. I mean, when we go into a grocery store, you try to get one over on someone. If they make a mistake on the price, you laugh about it, and you basically take the thing without paying what you're supposed to pay for it. Well, maybe you look at things in a larger way of saying, well, no, the universe has a reciprocity here. In other cultures, if you paid too much or too little for something, the seller would give you something more. If you paid too much, they'd give you another thing as well. If you paid too little, they might cut a piece of it off because they believe that there's this sense of equality there. When you take, it would affect our raping of the planet, which is what we're doing now. If you think that you're part of something bigger and this is all you're not going to destroy the ozone layer. You're not going to destroy the forests. You're not going to think all the time in your businesses about how you always have to make a profit. Maybe we have enough. Maybe we just have to work out how to sustain what we have instead of constantly having growth. With children, you're not going to just tell them, get out there and win on the football team. You're going to teach a more cooperative way of working with other children, that you you sit in a circle. You don't have to be called upon. You don't have to be humiliated in education, in your school. Maybe you just quietly go out and learn by observing, as native cultures do. And when the child knows it, the child comes back and everybody applauds the fact that he has information. You are going to listen to all your intuitive things and not listen to just what the radio says. If you intuitively don't think it's going to rain, don't bring your umbrella. Listen to your intuition, not the weather report. So you're going to access other forms of information rather than the ones that you see with your five senses and the ones that you're told. You're also not going to listen to what they tell you all the time. Now it's going to have some global effects too in the way that and it's already starting with things like peace universities and things like that, but other ways of looking at things. And it's also going to grow in tiny groups where small groups can start talking together about other ways of being, that we don't have to just do it this way, where it's dog eat dog. I don't have enough. I want what you have kind of ways of doing. And as I say, many times when I found myself, I put my cup out and it gets filled. And oftentimes against impossible odds. Ed Mitchell said that to me. I said to him, how did you ever finance the Institute of Noetic Sciences and put 4 kids through college? And he said, trust the process. He said, I trusted the process. I got my kids through school. Whenever I needed money, it came my way. I just trusted the process. So I think it's oftentimes not so much a striving, that the true intention isn't really a striving and a forcing. It's a letting go. And it's an acknowledgement of allowing things in. When you talk to all the best healers in my study that I talk about in my book about the AIDS patients, where they had healers all across America, and they took a batch of terminal AIDS patients, and they each were given a different patient to pray for a week. They traded patients, so it wasn't just one kind of healer. There were about 50 healers. The healers, it was demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt that distant healing worked, and that these guys, the AIDS patients who were prayed for, got better. The AIDS patients who were the control group, who were not prayed for, got worse. And what all of the healers who were effective were saying is about letting go, about opening yourself up to a greater power coming in, and that just saying, please, may this person be healed. So without trying to sound really corny, it's relearning how to really pray. And I'm not just talking about praying to the white man in the beard who sits on a cloud upstairs. I'm talking about praying to a larger entity, a real sense of the divine, and trying to allow that into yourself and allowing yourself to be just part of that flow, almost like a channel for it. And that really is perhaps the ultimate way that we start really understanding how to live the field.
Well, I wanted to ask you this question. This is a perfect lead into it. This whole thing about religion and sort of where we're going in consciousness or modern spirituality, what's the difference between your traditional dyed-in-the-wool religion and sort of the world that you seem to be Columbusing without a compass into?
Okay. There's different metaphors for the same thing, basically. Our current idea about religion and ancient ideas of religion are part of man's intuitive sense of the divine, intuitive sense of the force or the field. We've all had an intuitive sense that there's a larger unity there. And so really the field, you could call it the Holy Ghost, or you could call it the field, but it's the same thing. I think our sense of religion now is one of the problems with organized religions, though, is that there is this sense of separateness, that it's only good to be a Protestant, or that people who are Catholics are the only people who know the way. And I think now our current understanding of quantum physics is this understanding of complete unity, and so that we have to derive our spirituality from a sense of unity. And really all working together rather than, again, this kind of sense, a different kind of separateness, a separateness with a different label. But I think it is really what I looked at was really a science of the miraculous. And it's really understanding that there's scientific proof for those things that we've always intuitively understood but never had proof for. Now we do.
And what what's the top 3 on the hit list in your mind of the scientific proof of the miraculous? And not going into detail, just kind of like at a chapter heading. What would they? Because that's a very intriguing thing you say. It's like, oh, really? What?
Okay.
It's for people watching the movie. They're like, well, I fell asleep for the last 10 minutes. I need the top 3 here.
Okay. I'm just going to think for a second. You're talking about studies and things like that. Okay. I think the top 3 scientific, no, let me just say this again. I think the top 3 hit list, as far as I'm concerned, in scientific evidence of the divine, is one, all of the evidence that thought can affect living systems. And we're talking about thought can affect healing, and the evidence that healers actually have an energy that can be that's palpable, can be measured, and can affect people. So that we don't need a lot of equipment. We just need our hands, basically, to make people better. I think that's number 1. I think 2 is the idea that our thoughts last forever. Our thoughts can affect things backward and forward in time, and all the evidence from the REG machines to remote viewing to even prayer. There have been some studies demonstrating retro prayer, that you can pray for people and that, we might be able to go back and fix what happened and make it better. That maybe there's no beginning and end to things. Maybe there's just a continuum that we can make better and improve on things. And the third is, I think, the power of the group. That there is more and more evidence demonstrating that if one person has power with intention, that with the random event generators are demonstrating that all of us are affecting them all the time by our collective thinking. So it really means that we have to all get together and start thinking the same good things at the same time.